Again, I'm excited because I think what we're talking about here today, which is workforce development, socioeconomic multipliers, is really talking about how extending the conversation that we started earlier today in nuclear. We've talked about what the technologies we have available. We've talked a little bit about why we need it. And we've also, in this symposium especially, been able to talk about how we're going to make it happen with the financing and with some of the other challenges ahead of us. And I'm really excited to talk about, the users, the workers, the communities that are going to be impacted positively, we certainly hope, but are going to need to be able to, are going to need to be consulted and are going to have to participate in the change. So I've asked each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, and I guess we will go in an order which I probably should have decided earlier, but it doesn't really matter. How about we start with labor? John, will you go ahead?
Philip, thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today, to be able to give the perspective of the workers on these sites and on these projects. What brought me into the energy sector, and let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm an international representative for the United Association representing 24,000 plumbers, pipe fitters, and sprinkler fitters in the state of New York. And the implementation of the CLCPA and its focus on mostly renewable, with billions going to renewable energy credits, put tens of thousands of building trades members at risk, their livelihoods. I serve as a vice president on the New York State Building and Construction Trades Council and the New York State AFL-CIO. So with the implementation of the CLCPA compounded by the closing of Indian Point, where there were 1,000 full-time jobs lost, and it was covered earlier, over 30 million in revenue to the community, but millions of man hours a year in shutdowns and maintenance to that facility. Now, when we talk about jobs and the impact of jobs today, we're talking about careers. We're not talking about just a temporary job, because every job in construction is a temporary job. But every job for a union worker, and in the nuclear industry, it's a high union density. You have medical benefits, and one day the promise to retire with dignity with a pension. And when that goes away, members have to seek work in other states just to be able to pay their medical and to pay into their pension. Now we're talking about a complete turnaround in New York. Doreen Harris was here earlier, and I'm so proud of Governor Hochul in her support of the nuclear industry. But we realize what we're up against. The state is going to need 20 gigawatts of zero emission power by 2040. That's a tremendous amount of energy. How do we?
Green means go.
Green. So it shows you the amount we're going to need. And I'm going to just fast forward because so much was covered today. And hopefully you can see this one slide. When we think about the difference between renewable jobs only and nuclear jobs. The Flint Mine Solar, which was 100 megawatts in upstate New York, there were 284 to 352 construction jobs created and one to two operations and maintenance jobs. Bluestone Wind was 122 megawatts, 150 construction jobs, and 7 maintenance jobs. Compared to a nuclear 100 megawatt project, 1,238 jobs and 374 maintenance jobs. If we go a step further, we had a representative from Terra Power here today. Terra Power, 345 megawatts, 2,000 construction jobs, and 250 in operations and maintenance. And we talked about Plant Vogel, 9,000 construction jobs and 800 maintenance jobs each and every year. That's the comparison, and that's what's on the table right now. So when I used to speak at Climate Action Council hearings, and well-meaning environmentalists would claim that it's important, we can ban natural gas, we can shut down the nuclear plants, and we'll figure out a way to do it with renewable. It's not going to happen. And it's not a just transition. That's a word that's been bandied about for many, many years. It is not a just transition. So now we fast forward where the state is today. We're proud to say that there's a $100 billion investment in Micron Technologies. It's going to create thousands of construction jobs, thousands of jobs after, and it's going to transform that community. In addition to data centers, which require a lot of power, both of those projects are going to need a tremendous amount of power. Firm, dispatchable, zero emission power. The only way to get that done is to really focus on nuclear. We could stop there.
Awesome. Let's hit the green button. Let's have the green button. Why don't you pass that down to
Sure.
to Phil?
Good afternoon. My name is Phil Church. I'm the county administrator from Oswego County. I'm also their budget officer. And I want to thank Nuclear New York and Constellation for asking me to come down and talk today about our experience as a nuclear host community. 1965 was an important year in the history of Oswego County. 9 Mile 1 ground was broken, and I was born, the future administrator. So I was born 4 miles from the site, grew up 2 miles from the site. So Unit 1 and I sort of grew up together, and one of us matured. So 1969, Nixon was president. We put a man on the moon, and 9 Mile 1 became operational. Shortly thereafter, a couple of years later, James A. Fitzpatrick was built and became operational. That one was owned by the state, and not a private owned and operated by the state. And by 1988, 9 Mile Point 2 was finished and became operational. So today, fast forward, we have 3 reactors. The 9 Mile, it's called 9 Mile Point, although the company names are a little, the site names are a little different. Together, they produce over 2,700 megawatts of power and employ over 1,400 people. If you recently read the Brattle report, all of the reactors in upstate New York support over 14,000 direct and indirect jobs. And if they were to go away, the state's GDP would take a $38 billion hit. Now, this is to illustrate the importance of to the economy as a host community. The folks that work at the plants live in our communities. They spend money there. It's not just 1,400 employees, it's 1,400 families that benefit directly as employees of those plants. Not to mention all the companies and small businesses that surround the area that they cater. Now, as a county, beyond the economic impact of a host community, of a nuclear power plant, as the county budget director, one of the host community benefits that I think of is the tax revenue. You said green is go? There we go. Okay. So to prepare for this, I kind of looked back at the history of the tax support of these 3 plants. And I went back as far as I could find, 1994. And back then, the combined tax support to just the county was almost $29 million and nearly 20% of the entire county budget. Fast forward to today through various changes, that support is $12.6 million and about 5% of my budget. Now so what happened? Well, that first section here to the first red line was a time when the energy industry was having some trouble, and particularly the value of nuclear plants was declining, so their tax payments were declining. And that led up to deregulation. That first slope downwards was when the plants were regulated. Deregulation made it difficult for the plants had to enter competitive market. So the community and the plants came together with tax agreements that would reduce the taxes further to help these plants compete and stay in our communities and operating and employing and having that economic impact that I just talked about. Those were 10-year tax agreements marked by that second section. They were designed to decline the first 5 years and then stabilize the next 5 years. And what changed in that deregulation mark is the Fitzpatrick plant was wisely sold by New York State. Government does not do a good job competing in the competitive market, and that plant began paying taxes as well. So we come to the end of the first 10-year tax agreement, and it was time to enter new ones. And this is when we really started to create a concerted effort at improving relations with the plants. Because as you can imagine, with that tax revenue declining, the community although overwhelmingly nuclear positive and recognizing the economic importance, they started to grumble a little bit about the plants paying their fair share because they saw their property taxes rising. So we entered into new tax agreements. And that middle hump, that aberration, becomes important because it illustrates what happens when relations don't always go well. We entered into a tax agreement with 9 Mile 1 and 2 that went very well, but the prior owner of Fitzpatrick, relations fell apart. We ended up in a tax certiorari proceeding. That's a court fight over battles. They went on the tax rolls. It was a mess. And what happens when you don't have good relations and a good process for negotiating tax agreements is that roller coaster. And that roller coaster is not good for the community in terms of budgeting. It's not good for the company in terms of budgeting. Eventually, we got that settled with the transfer of Fitzpatrick, which had been threatened with closure, to its current owner, Constellation, which also now owns all 3 plants. And from there on, the relations have been terrific. Constellation has been a great partner with us. They work with us on workforce development. They are great contributors to the community. What we have found is when the governments work together with the owners of the generators, we develop win-win situations in terms of policy and influencing regulation and laws at the state and federal level. For example, we're working together along with Carbon Free New York for the renewal of the ZEC program. Beyond the economics and the taxes, there's a tremendous benefit to our community in terms of Constellation's philanthropy. These numbers, as big as they are only 2024. Their community or their employee match program and their foundation resulted in $1.2 million in giving to our local nonprofit organizations that do great work in our communities. They supported regional philanthropy to the tune of $500,000, focusing on climate, education, and importantly, workforce development. They also contributed $100,000 to our child care incentives. And altogether, over 17,000 hours of employee volunteerism from employees of the plants in our community. Now, considering the audience I've got, I would be remiss in not doing my job to talk about why Oswego County wants to host another plant. In fact, the last day of construction in 1988, people are already saying, okay, when can we build the next one? So we've waited a long time, but for all the reasons I've already cited, plus these, Constellation has the land. It's a site that's already federally approved for nuclear development. We already have the infrastructure, the siren system. We have the emergency system and an emergency management department that is trained and stood up for radiological response, which is another area we work tremendously well with Constellation in preparing and exercising those drills. We have a workforce that is, we already have a nuclear workforce in-house. And we even have some of the older guys around who built 9 Mile 2 who know the ropes. They'll tell you that these new guys don't know anything, but they're willing to come forward too and begin working on a site. But probably most importantly, we're community ready. We are an extremely positive, nuclear positive community. In fact, we've made the trip down here today as Center State representative of Center State CEO, the Economic Development Agency for Central New York. Representatives of our Chamber of Commerce have come to your symposium. Plant employees have come to your symposium. Representatives of our local trades have come to your symposium. And if you're not convinced, I want to close by drawing your attention to the county logo. Those of you in business know that branding is important, messaging is important. This is loaded with symbolism. The outline is the outline of Fort Ontario, representing our history and the important role we played in American history. You see a plow representing our agricultural industry. You see a graduation hat representing our great educational institutions. We have a state university. You see a fish We are known as one of the best trophy fishing areas in the Northeast. So if you're into that, lake, river, salmon, and trout, come on up. And the sailboat is our tourism industry, which is centered largely around Lake Ontario. But in the center of it all, you see a power plant representing our energy industry. Hydro, gas, cogen, fossil fuel, but in the very center, the atomic symbol. Show me another community that's got an atomic symbol in its official logo. And it's been that way for 40 years. So when it comes to nuclear, Oswego County is all in. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
Yep.
Let's turn to Michelle now, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Letting us know who you are, what's going on, all the exciting things happening at GAIN.
All right, so I work for the Gateway for Accelerated Nuclear, which is a mouthful, so we like to refer to ourselves as GAIN. My background is 19 years working with Constellation as a senior reactor operator and director of outages, and then I came to GAIN to help new communities and areas, states, local representatives understand the technology, what the difference is between the current technology and advanced reactors, and questions you can ask to understand where the different developers are in terms of technology maturity. So I bring a unique experience, having been an outage manager. I happen to know that, yes, we do need a workforce to build new nuclear plants, but we also need workforce to support our outages, right? So we have, in the nuclear business, we have an outage season every spring and every fall. And the workforce goes from roughly 700 people on site to about 2,000 people on site, right? With extra contractors and folks coming in to do the maintenance that needs to be done for those facilities. So based on that experience, I've recently done some state work in Kentucky, of all places, educating folks there who have been displaced from coal work, right? That their skill sets transfer to a traveling outage job in the nuclear industry. And I happen to know, right, that those skill sets will continue to evolve from a gas plant to a coal plant to a nuclear plant, no matter what the technology is that you pick. So I say that as we talk today about, data centers, nuclear plants, where are we going to get the energy from? The trades, your skill sets transfer across multiple different areas, right? And so it's important that folks understand the opportunities that are going to be out there for nuclear, but how they also translate to other industries, which can help bolster the overall economic opportunity, I would say, for the state and for a community.
Awesome. Well, Carolyn, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. So Carolyn Amen with the Deloitte Research Center for Energy and Industrials. So I lead our Power Utilities and Renewables group. And over the past 7 years, we've been focused a lot on looking at future of energy scenarios and what those might look like, the energy transition, and then how that translates also to the workforce and how you would need to plan your workforce development to prepare for that future. And then most recently, we've really deep dived into AI infrastructure and the impact sort of across sectors and the workforce as well. So I'm just going to kind of round out what some of our other speakers have already mentioned, kind of zoom out, look at what the nuclear workforce looks like today and where it's going. So we have currently 57,900 nuclear workers in power generation, another 10,000 in nuclear fuels, and then 100 in nuclear storage. And I think one of the big things, and of course, 3,500 here in New York. So one of the big things to emphasize when you look at, so what do these jobs look like, is that they are the highest paid jobs in the power sector. So if we're looking at the 15 primary sort of occupations, the top paid one is nuclear engineers, and the median wage is twice the median wage of electric, just the median wage for electric power generations, 3 times the national median wage. The second highest is nuclear plant reactor operators, and the fourth is nuclear technicians. And those three occupations, in addition to power dispatchers and distributors, are the only ones where the median wage is more than $100,000 a year. So when you talk about the impact on communities, the multiplier effect, those have the highest multiplier effect, the most number of indirect jobs that are going to come from each of those jobs. Another big point to emphasize is that it is very highly unionized segment. So if we're looking at, again, power generation, it's actually twice the unionization rate, right? It's around 19% of the general economy, just close to 7%. And then if you look at the electric power generation in general, it's around 12%. We also have we did a survey actually for power utility executives. And one of the areas we did highlight though is there's more opportunity for cooperation between utilities and unions in terms of workforce development. We've had 53% of respondents said they work really closely with educational institutions to prepare, sort of bridge the gap between workforce today and in the future and the skills development, but only a quarter said they were working closely with unions on that. So maybe that's an area that can have you build on that as well, opportunity for growth. And then it's also a third point to emphasize, talk about this, also a highly diversified workforce. We look at 32% share both for the female workforce and also non-white workforce. And that's, again, higher than the rate in general in the electric power generation sector and the broader economy, except obviously for the female workforce, where it's 47% in the broader economy. And so if we look there, some of the opportunities, I mean, some of that is structural. If you look at the STEM pipeline, right, training is 28% women. So, I mean, there's, that's where you're drawing the talent from. So that's one area, that's more structural, but there's also sector specific, areas. It's important to emphasize utilities again, because the nuclear workforce is, the utility segment of that is very high at 69%, which is the highest in electric power generation. And then just the nuclear segment itself, for a long time, people didn't necessarily see the growth potential, this growing area to get into. And so these are things that can all be addressed. There's, sort of broad-based things you can do, going back to elementary level, in schools, talking about, STEM and educating about the nuclear industry. But there are also more targeted approaches. I mean, just in light of, if you're looking at other sectors where there's going to be a huge, build out of infrastructure, a lot of competition with other sectors in the economy, an opportunity to maybe do very targeted pipeline development, tap other groups, beyond ones that the industry is currently reaching out to with existing association relationships. There's 25 million workers, kind of more that are not necessarily tapped through those right now. If you look at caregivers, formerly incarcerated, or neurodiverse talent, some of these other groups, it's an opportunity to think about how you would adapt the workplace to attract more of those workers. And so things like having maybe more part-time options for engineering jobs, or remote work options, looking at apprenticeships to also tap into some people who maybe just don't have the degree, and so they're locked out of some jobs, but there's an opportunity to bring them into the fold.
Awesome.
Phil, if I could add
You
to that
may.
just a minute, because it's great.
I have a question for you first, though.
Oh, go right ahead. You're the moderator.
So the question is, are nuclear jobs good jobs, or are they the best jobs?
As far as energy generation, nuclear jobs are the best jobs. And Carolyn brought up a really good point. A model of direct entry pre-apprenticeship programs are right here in New York City. and under the leadership of Gary LaBarbera, who's also the state building trades president, is up to 40% of every new apprenticeship class here in New York City. 10% come from helmets to hard hats, our returning veterans. 10% from non-traditional employment for women. 10% from pathways to apprenticeship, which are formerly incarcerated individuals that never had an opportunity for a union career. And another 10% construction skills, which are vocational schools in New York City. These programs have now spread to the entire state, slowly but surely in communities. But what do we need? We need work certainty. We need to have that certainty of work to be able to open the doors to our apprenticeship to help those communities that never had a chance for a union career. And to actually, an entrance into a building trades apprenticeship program is an entrance in the middle class.
Excellent. Well, I am just thrilled by this panel because I had a bunch of questions here. I was going to ask about the benefits and how local communities might benefit and where the jobs are coming from and what opportunities were open to people who might not be inside the nuclear workforce yet. So thanks, guys.
Covered it.
I had a question. Well, I've got a bunch of questions. I got some questions on some of the challenges. I think we're going to do this one because this is, I hear all the time. And maybe I'll take an opportunity to tell a story. I was speaking recently with some folks who are working hard to take a nuclear power plant that went offline and bring it back online. And obviously this is a new thing for us, but we have entered this phase where we have communities where, because we know that communities that have nuclear love nuclear, right? And there may be a question that one of our panelists might want to jump in on about how we can convert people who don't have nuclear sites yet to be as excited about nuclear sites. But this particular plant, the 3 Mile, so Crane Clean is hiring, and they are hiring like mad, and they are hiring electricians, and they are hiring pipe fitters, and they are hiring all across the trades at every level. And they have already hit, according to what they told me, they have already hit the end of the roster at the local unions. So they are not halfway staffed with a plant that's already built. We have some pretty huge ambitions as to how we're going to grow our nuclear fleet. And I guess I will just throw it, John, very briefly.
I'll try.
Very briefly.
Red is stop.
And then someone else is going to jump in and expand upon that. But I want to hear, do we have enough workers? Are we going to get more workers?
We do.
How's that going to happen?
We do. And I speak for most building trade unions like our brothers in the IBW. Michael Yee is here today. As a stopgap, we can take traveling members from other communities. And we do that very often between Oswego and Buffalo and Rochester, even in New York City as well, and other states. We can travel all over, but that's a stopgap. What we need to do is grow the workforce, and what we do best is organize. The UA in the last 9 years have brought in 50,000 new members. Because you mentioned the percentage of union density across the country, there's a large workforce that's out there that's not represented. And all they need is the opportunity to come in and change their life.
Does anyone else want to speak into that? Maybe,
Sure.
please, I'd like to hear from Carolyn.
Yeah, just jump in. Another big opportunity is to go into areas where you have a declining workforce. For example, with the coal workforce, I mean, right now utilities are looking about 3,500 workers a year that they'd have to transition out of the closed, coal plants into new positions. And if you look at some of the needs for the nuclear industry, even beyond just generation, if you look at the supply chain, and you're going to need, I think the World Nuclear Association just came out with this report showing that we would need, to increase, the uranium requirements, right? Increase by a third to like 85,000 tons by 2030, 150,000 tons by 2040, but the production's going to have in that time frame. So we're going to need a lot more mining, here domestically as well, and a lot of those jobs beyond the other transfers you said, we're talking about, that you could transfer coal jobs to the nuclear industry. Even in those mining jobs, there could be a lot of opportunities there to, transfer the workforce. And beyond that, even taking the existing infrastructure that the coal plants already have and then building nuclear there with data centers. I mean, we're seeing examples of that right now where you have, in Pennsylvania, the largest, investment ever in the state. It's a coal plant converted into a gas plant in this case, and it's doubling the capacity. It's going to serve this huge data center campus. Kind of thinking in those terms, and you can get plants online much faster that way than if you have to go through the whole, process of doing it from scratch. And
Awesome.
Right.
I'll just add in, so roughly 70% of the job codes from a coal plant transfer directly over to a nuclear plant. And what's interesting about that as an ex-senior reactor operator is the plant's kind of, the control panel's in an L shape, and the left-hand side is a traditional coal plant. The middle is the control rods, and the right side is all the systems you need for a nuclear plant. So obviously, there's a lot of systems that we use that directly translate, and the coal industry folks don't understand that. So I think there's a piece of informing workforce that may have the skills that we need to come and join our cause, so to speak. But I also think that there's a piece of educating folks that are currently in school, right? Whether it be high school or grade schools, right? We need to increase focus on trades so that we can move these jobs forward, because when you look at a nuclear power plant, 2/3 of the plant is really maintenance, right? So 2/3 of the plant is reunion, at least at the plant that I worked at. And so those jobs are going to be critical to moving this forward.
And this is an area where local government can play a role in workforce development. When it was announced that Micron was going to build in central New York, about 3 miles over our border, we knew this would create a demand on the trades and the workforce. And until that point, Oswego County's Employment and Training office was a division underneath our social services department. So it was very human services oriented. I talked to the legislature about the challenges ahead and said, I think now's the time to pull that out of DSS, elevate it to full department status, and turn it into an economic development tool rather than a human service. So we did that because I knew I had a bright, young, talented director there who could pull this off and wanted to do it. She's moved ahead, created several job training programs, one of which is called Oswego Build, which prepares people for apprenticeships in the trades. First cohort of that is underway now. And in a conversation with her, I think a couple of weeks ago, she let me know that the next cohort is adding a component focusing on nuclear. So this is just an example of one of the roles government can play in helping to develop that workforce.
Well, thank you very much. I have a couple more questions here that I could ask, but I'm also noting the time, and I would love to get some input from the audience. I have questions that are important that I think I could ask. That I could ask about, how we want to identify new communities and how we want to explain to those communities what the benefits might be. We have some challenges potentially in identifying where the importance of how we can work to make sure we know with certainty that plans are coming. I hear a lot about the importance of understanding some kind of a commitment, and that also, potentially some questions about the community willingness to support them for places that don't yet have nuclear. But anyone can ask those questions. And so I want to open it up to the audience and see if there's anyone out here who would like to ask a question. We've got some microphones coming around, I hope. Yep. And I'm going to ask those people, let's get Guido over here. Because Guido, I know Guido well enough that I can tell him to keep it short. And I can ask you to stand up, show me that beautiful face.
Gonna stand up for nuclear.
Just,
My question is for the other Philip. How do we get you to, or someone from your community to go out there and shake your communities? Like in California, they are almost clinically terrified of standing up for nuclear. Like the people of San Luis Obispo sent nobody, even if they were invited, to the IA event where they had nuclear communities. And it seems that even if the people are okay or approve of nuclear, many elected officers in these communities are either neutral, scared, or actively working against nuclear. So to see that logo of your city, it's a surprise. But how do we get this replicated elsewhere?
That didn't happen overnight. It is largely the experience of the community that drives that. the community benefited so much for that any opposition that existed, quickly dwindled away within the first decade or two. I can't even remember the last protest that occurred. It occurred when I was a peon working for the county over 25 years ago. It is simply a continued effort of the community leadership to work well with the local plants, also with a degree of transparency. The plants have always been very good about inviting local leaders out to the plants once or twice a year, giving us a state of the plant report that keeps our two communities engaged with the plants. In terms of how you turn another community into favor it, it's a hard question for me. I've never had to do it, but I think those who are interested in these other communities could invite leaders from our community to come speak at civic events, tell us we can tell them of our experience. They can talk to their peers, politician to politician, or a nonprofit leader to nonprofit leader, voter to voter. And it might help to hear others' experience directly from people they relate with.
Okay, if I could add into that, because that's part of what I do at GAIN. So it goes to what Philip says. It's bringing in folks that have some of the education or some of the knowledge in nuclear and bringing that to communities, but it's also bringing in a voice of understanding what they want to answer, what questions they have, and bringing open and honest communications about what you can't answer, right? Some communities may not accept nuclear, and I think that's okay. But the ones that really want it are going to stand up and ask for it. And I've seen that across different states, like in Colorado, there's coal plants that are going to shut down. They're absolutely looking for it. In Wyoming, you had 4 different communities looking for the natrium reactor. So it's really about finding the communities that have at least some interest in getting questions answered and working with them to meet them in the middle.
I'm also wondering if some segments, right, might be open to some. So if you look at 90% of the energy in nuclear rods, right, goes to waste, and it's right now we have 90,000 tons kind of spread around the country, and there's billions of dollars now and administration support to recycle that into usable fuel for the new nuclear plants that are coming online. I'm wondering if that's that sort of recycling angle, there would be maybe more receptiveness starting there.
Nice. Yeah, so thank you for the question.
Yeah, I had a question for John. You have obviously international representation that goes beyond the 48 lower states. There is significant construction underway in Canada, in Ontario, both at the Darlington site and at Bruce Power, 12 units, $26 billion of construction on time and on budget. I'm sure you've got members of your brotherhood who are part of that effort. Given the proximity of Northern New York and Ontario, how do you foresee leveraging some of that workforce in Canada who might be able to assist down here? Is that realistic or not?
Not yet. We've tried, and there's still a problem with getting Canadians across the border to be able to work here in the States and vice versa. We've tried. So not yet.
So I guess the follow-up is it a good idea?
It's a good idea. I mean, they're our brothers. The UA is the United States and Canada. So without a doubt. But right now, we're not able to do that.
I have a question over here.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Dan Shedrick. 2 questions, I think probably Johnny Murphy and Philip could answer best. So Micron has announced a $1 billion or $1.5 billion commitment to the facilities in Clay, which is right outside of Syracuse. How much funding is directly attributable to nuclear over the 10 years that they're going to fund power facilities? What do we know? What
I don't have that answer. Maybe Phil would know. Don't know. I know they were planning on doing it with nuclear and renewable, both.
Right.
But when those fabs are operational, they're going to require 2 gigawatts of power. 2 gigawatts, just that one facility. So we need a lot of power.
Right. Micron's going to create a demand on the grid. And there's no question about that. I was told after the announcement, the chairman of their site selection committee was among the contingent that came into the communities to talk to us. And in our office, he did say that they chose Clay not only because of the location and everything that had been done by Onondaga County and the state to get them there, but one of the deciding factors was Oswego County's port and Oswego County's nuclear plants. So they recognize the need for that power. I think Micron is going to create a demand that I believe is another incentive for why if there's going to be new nuclear developed in New York State, a good place to begin is in Oswego County where it's site ready and can supply some of Micron's demand.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're just at time now. I would like to give, since my questioners were pretty directing in their questions, I'd like to give Michelle and Carolyn an opportunity to add anything at this point if they want to, before we finish up the conversation.
Just wanted to add, we also didn't touch on sort of the workforce needs also in the regulatory front, right? The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, right? It's going to be really important to making sure projects can advance. And then just looking at some of the opposition that we're seeing right now, a lot of growing opposition, doubling actually of, at the state level of motions sort of against renewable projects that are now more than 90% of the pipeline. We've seen a 29% right, increase measures against it and 76% increase in public opposition. So these are things also to just bear in mind of what to look ahead to as possible challenges that are impacting infrastructure across the board.
Excellent points. You're happy. Okay. Well, I would really like to thank this panel for giving us the insight. I'd like to thank everyone for their good questions. I think what's clear is that we need, as we advance through and kind of try and fulfill these ambitions of building big and building fast, we need to make sure everyone's on board. And that includes the workers and the communities that are going to build it, that are going to operate it, and that where it's going to live. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank
folks.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.